So I'm here in my course and I want to create a test for students. So if you're going to create a test for students, you need to go to test, surveys, and pools. So I'm going to explain a little bit what each of these are, but for our purposes, we're just going to focus on tests and pools. So pools is like a pool, like a jury pool almost. So a pool is where you create a pool of questions that you can then pull from when you create a test. So this is very helpful if, for example, your final exam is cumulative. So for my students, what I do is they have weekly quizzes throughout the semester, and then I make sure to grab from that pool of questions for their final exam. So I start by creating pools, and then I create tests. So tests is where you're actually going to create the test for a student. There are 3 parts of making a test. You have to make the test, you have to add questions to the test, and then you have to deploy the test somewhere in a lesson area. But we're going to focus on pools first. So if you go into pools, we're going to talk about how to build a pool. So the easiest way to build a pool is to use an Excel spreadsheet, in my experience. So let's go to build pool, and we're going to call this test pool. You can also add a description to this pool, but I've already named it, so I'm comfortable that I know what it is. So I'm going to hit submit. So if you wanted to go the hard route, essentially, you can create a question one by one. And I'm just going to show you how to do that with 1 question, just so you can see the process if you need to do a one-off question. So you would go to create question, and I'm going to select multiple choice. So you can give the question a title. I hardly ever do it because I think the question text is enough. So what is my favorite color? So for a multiple choice question, you would put the question text here, and then you have your correct answer here. So you would click next to the answer that is correct. So I'm going to put my correct answer here, and then I'm going to put a series of incorrect answers, like you would with a multiple choice question. And I can also make the choice to give feedback to a student. So if they get the correct response, you can give them feedback. And if they get the incorrect response, you can also give them feedback and a little bit of encouragement, let them know to try again. So I'm gonna hit submit. And now I've created a question, okay? And to see the question, you can click on this icon that looks like 2 pieces of paper on top of each other. And you can actually see the question and the correct answer. So that would take a long time, right? If I had like 20 questions that I wanted to add, that would take a long time. It would be very intense. And I don't have that time. I've got 20 questions. I need to upload them right away. So the way you would do that is you would use an Excel spreadsheet. So I'm going to go ahead and click over to Blackboard. So in order to upload questions to Blackboard, you need to have a very specific file type that Blackboard likes to read, and that is called a tab delimited text file. And I'm going to show you how to make one today. But you can make one starting with an Excel spreadsheet, and there is a certain format that you need to follow. So I'm going to scroll down here and show you an example of that. So this is a sample question file here. So you can see multiple choice, this is multiple answer, and there's also a corresponding code. So I'm going to dump this into the chat really quick so you guys have it. But this is where I kind of got the idea to create an Excel spreadsheet. So here are the instructions on Blackboard. And then I'm actually going to open up my Excel spreadsheet right now. I'm going to go to desktop, which is where I saved it. So this is my multiple choice template. And let me also put the URL to that into the chat as well, so you guys can have it. So this will link to a Google Sheet, and you can download it for yourself. Perfect. So now that I'm in this, you can see that each of these is a multiple choice question, and you have the incorrect answers and then the correct answers. I've kind of randomized them just to kind of keep it random, because I didn't want the correct answer to be the first answer every time. But as you can see, I have a series of questions, and then I have incorrect answers, and then I have correct answers in green here. So what I would want to do is, if I'm in here and you can change the questions, of course. So here I have, let's do, what is my favorite color? Question mark. And we'll put purple as the correct answer, right? So I want to upload these 27 questions into Blackboard. What I need to do in order to do that is I need to go to File, Save As, and then I want to save this not as an Excel workbook, but a tab delimited text file. And I want to make sure that it's going to save to the desktop. So I'll hit save, and it will have saved. Now, in order to upload those questions to Blackboard, they're in the format that Blackboard wants. But in order to upload those questions, I need to go into my canvas, into my pool canvas, and upload those questions. So I'm going to select Upload Questions, and it's going to say File containing questions to import. I'm going to select Browse, and then I want to find that tab delimited text file. So it's going to look like this. It's going to look like a very basic text file. I'm going to select Open. At this point, you can also select the points per question. So I'll just put 5. And then you want to hit Submit. Once you've hit Submit, it'll say Question Upload Successful. And look at that, 27 questions I did not have to put in by hand. And so we have 2 of what is my favorite color, still purple. And we have all these other questions. So once I'm happy with this, I say okay, and I have a test pool here. So once you've created your pool, it's like creating your jury pool. You've selected your jurors that you want to pull from. Well, how are we going to put those in a test? So we're going to go over that next. So you want to go back to Test Surveys and Pools. You want to select Test. And I am going to call this, you're going to select Build Test, and I'm going to call this Test, right? And I can put a description, but I tend not to because I know what it is by the name. Hit Submit. And then what you want to do is you want to select Reuse Question. So in order to pull questions from a pool, you can either just dump those, all 27 of those questions here if you want, but I like to take a random sampling from the questions, because I'll have students do a question that is 10 questions, and if they take it multiple times, which I allow them 3 times to take it, then it gives them a random pull of those questions. So it kind of makes it really hard to cheat, because it's not going to be the same questions every time. So I want to create a random block. And now it's going to allow me to pick which questions I want and from which pools. So I want to select our test pool that we just created, and I want to select all pool questions. You can see here that it will allow you to choose by question type. So if you have a specific type of question that you would like to choose instead, you can also indicate that here. So these are all the test questions I want that are from our test pool, and I'm going to hit Submit. Now you can see I've created a random block, and it's got this link here, and the total number of questions in this block are 28. Well, we need to decide how many questions to display. So that's where this comes in, number of questions to display. If you leave this at 1, it will only display 1 question, which I don't think you're going to want. So out of 28, we maybe want it to display 10 questions, and we're going to hit Submit. And then you also want to look at your points per question over here to make sure that you total up to 100. or whatever amount that you want. If you're doing things by points instead of percentages, you can change that here too. So I have points per question is 10. I've created my random block. I have my pool that I am pulling from, and I have the questions that I want displayed. I want 10 questions displayed every time. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. So you just created the test, and it will show up here in test surveys and pools. What's cool about the test surveys and pools section is it will tell you if the test is deployed, and it will tell you where. So right now this test is not deployed. So that's the last step in making a quiz. So we've created the pool, we created the test, we've pulled from the pool, and now we have to deploy it in order for students to actually take it. So in order to do that, you want to click on lessons. And this is my lesson area, and you want to choose the area where you want the test to live. So I will choose here. So I want to select assessments and test. Now what's going to happen is it's going to say add a test, and I can add an existing test, and I can find the test that we just made. So I'm going to hit submit. Once you do that, it's going to give you the test options. So this is going to allow you to control how long that test is available, how long you want students to be able to take the test for, if you want a timer, how many times they'll be able to take it. So we're going to go through those options right now. So I like to open the test in a new window because that way it doesn't take them completely out of the Blackboard class. I like to make the test available to students. You can even add a new announcement for the test, and it will let students know, hey, there is a test available. Multiple attempts is good. And I like to allow 3 attempts. It's a nice round number. If you are going to allow multiple attempts, you want to make sure you score the attempt using the highest grade. So that way, if they get a 0 on one attempt or a 0 on their last attempt, that's not the last grade that they get. It'll give them the highest grade. You can also force completion. So what this does is it forces students to complete the test once they've started, and it doesn't allow them to save and come back. So if that's one way you want to avoid cheating, you can go ahead and click that. You can set a timer. And you can also control when to display the test after a certain date or before or until a certain date. I tend not to mess with those just because I forget what I put. You can also have a password for the test if you want. This is really an interesting feature. So if you have a student with a documented disability who needs more time on exams, you can give them an availability exemption by adding them as a user or group. And I don't have any students here, but let me go ahead and add a group. Submit. So this would be the student's name here, and you could change the number of attempts they had, and you could actually maybe remove the timer for them. So, or if they needed more time, you could put it here and say, okay, you need double time. I'm going to give you 120 minutes. And you can also control the availability just for this student. For due date, I'm going to select today, and I usually do by the end of the day. You also have the option to not allow students to start the test if the due date has passed. You want to include this test in the Grade Center and score calculations. And then this is another interesting section, show test results and feedback. So when a student submits the test, you can show them their score per question. This will not show them the correct answer. If you wanted to show them the correct answer, you would click all answers and correct. Some teachers don't like to do this because it can make it easier to cheat. So if they don't want to do that, what you could do instead is choose after the due date or after availability end date that you want to show the student all the answers and which ones are correct. That way, at least they know what they did wrong. You can also adjust the test presentation. You can present all at once, or you can randomize the questions and also do one at a time and prohibit backtracking. So this is helpful if you have maybe a test question later on in the test that gives the answer to another question in the test. It would not allow students to backtrack and change their original answer. So I'm going to hit submit. and it says success. This test was created. So I'm going to go down and find my test, and this is where it is. So I'm going to click into the test, and this is what you would see. You can click on this, and this is what you would see as a student. So I'm going to click begin. So now I have, these questions presented one at a time. I can hit save and submit. I can say okay, and then okay again. And then it will let me know the score that I got for this particular test. And that's pretty much it. How to create tests using pools, how to pull questions from a test, and how to deploy a test.